We have our awesome individual rows. Your quilt should look something like this. Now what we want to do is go ahead and attach the rows together. So what we're going to do is, this is the first 2 rows that I have. And same thing, you always want to double check if your fabric is directional that we're matching up. But just like the individual squares, we are going to put our 2 backs together. And then now what we want to do is, with either Wonder Clips or sewing pins, we are going to match up all of these seams. Now, if you don't have Wonder Clips or sewing pins, you could manually do this with your hand while you're sewing. It's not a deal breaker. We can make it work, but it is helpful. So what I am doing is, where my seams are meeting, I am pushing my seams apart, and I am going to place a Wonder Clip. Let me get that there so y'all could see better. Right where those 2 seams are. That's going to help me keep my quilt nice and lined up. So that is what that looks like. And I'm going to do that at every point where these squares line up. And we're going to go all the way through. Now that you have all your little wonder pins or safety pins or sewing pins, any kind of pins, into position, I always triple check the direction. So pretend you're opening it. You don't have to all the way, but just double check that once this opens, that it's facing this same way, because nothing's worse than having to go back and rip it out. But now that we're nice and prepped, let's head over to the machine. Now, just like before, we're going to get it lined up with our backs together. We checked our directions. We're nice and prepped. We're going to also still do that 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down, connecting these 2 rows together. And just like before, we're going to want to back stitch in the beginning and in the end, just to ensure that we're nice and anchored. Now, once you come up to where your seams align, we're going to go ahead and take out our pin, and we want to make sure that this stays nice and open, how we had it. That's one good thing about Wonder Clips. It kind of helps hold it in place. But before we run through the bottom, I'm just going to double check. And if you ever need to shimmy anything, if you keep your needle down, you can raise your foot and kind of finagle and move whatever you need to as you go. And all I'm doing as I'm doing my straight run is I'm wanting to make sure everything is staying lined up as it should. And you can never, slow and steady is great. Not everybody is a fast sewer, and that is a-okay. We're just going to slowly make our way down all the way through these 2 rows. Okay, now that you're done, you should be able to open it back up, and we have our 2 rows nice and together. Now what we want to do is go ahead and assemble all the other rows. Now some people, technically you could go in order and do every single row, but that's going to give you a lot of bulk as you're sewing. What I would recommend is sewing them 2 at a time and then going back and connecting them more together. That way it breaks it up for you. You don't have to worry about moving so much bulk at one time. But let's go ahead and get all of these individual rows connected into one big beautiful quilt, and I'll see y'all at the next step.